Hello, my name is Julie Novak, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with you today about my topic, which is utilizing music therapy to teach language skills for students who are deaf or hard of hearing. I'd like to start with telling you a little bit about myself. I was previously the music therapist and music educator at the Colorado School for the Deaf and the Blind. I worked for 10 years with the School for the Deaf preschool through 8th grade programs. I currently work for the Center for Hearing and Communication in Broward County, Florida, and now my focus is with high school students. I would like to briefly share with you what music therapy is. Music therapy is a field that requires a degree, it requires a board certification, and an internship. I like to define music therapy as the use of music for non-musical goals. You can find music therapists in many types of settings. You can find them in clinical settings, in hospitals, in hospice services. You can also find them in educational settings. A lot of times, school districts hire music therapists in special education settings. Research has indicated that music can aid in memory, attention, it provides motivation and reinforcement, and helps establish a positive learning environment. Oftentimes, when I talk about deafness in music, I sometimes get a quizzical response. One could hypothesize that students who are deaf, hard of hearing, why would they be good at music and why would they enjoy music? I always, when I get that kind of response, I like to highlight Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, which states that all of our brains are wired certain ways and different ways, and all of us have gifts. And my theory and Gardner's theory is that just because someone's hearing mechanism doesn't work like the typical hearing population, it doesn't mean that their brain is still not wired and gifted for music. In my studies and in my experience at the School for the Deaf and Blind, I have known profoundly deaf individuals who are rooted in the deaf community, but still enjoy any type of feedback they get from music. They have speaker systems at their house, they use earbuds, and even though what they're experiencing is vibrational, they still get reinforced and motivated by the rhythms of the vibrational feedback. And may I add, just like the hearing population, there are some hearing people who don't enjoy music. Music is not their thing. They don't enroll in any classes in music. They are just not connected to music. And I think similarly to the deaf community, there are some deaf members who don't identify with music at all. Research has indicated strengths and preferences for children who are deaf or hard of hearing. Let me give you a few seconds to read these bullets. So it states that music should be appropriately amplified. It is important for a teacher or a parent to realize that for a student who is deaf, hard of hearing, a Fisher-Price boombox is not going to do justice to the music that they are going to hear. You want to make sure the sound equipment is legit and that it's high quality. Children who are deaf, hard of hearing require more exposure, which makes sense because maybe their musical experiences aren't as vast as someone who had a lot of experiences previously. Rhythmic tendencies tend to be stronger than pitch-related abilities. It's really interesting, in a lot of the research, the students who are deaf, hard of hearing do just as well as the hearing subjects when it comes to rhythmic testing. So rhythmic tends to be very salient for the deaf population. And finally, sustaining instruments give more oral feedback, are more reinforcing than percussive instruments. This is an interesting finding because a lot of times in the deaf community, you'll see big bass drums at football games and at pep rallies. And while that instrument is very reinforcing for the deaf community, the research found that low frequency instruments like a trombone that sustains a low pitch tends to be more reinforcing and gives more feedback. Another example is a bass guitar. When you strum the string or when you pluck the string, the sound going through the amplifier is reinforcing. And it's important here that I mention that preference is very important. Here, as you know, in the deaf, hard of hearing population, a lot of times the hearing varies. There's high frequency loss, low frequency loss. So it is important to match preferences with the hearing loss. For example, the soprano recorder, which is a small, high-pitched instrument, a lot of my deaf students didn't like that instrument because it wasn't low pitched. They would actually detest that instrument. But occasionally, I'd have one or two students who would just fall in love with the soprano recorder. So you really do have to pay attention to preferences. I'll give you a second to read the slide. Is music a part of deaf culture? I think if I would ask a member of the deaf community, they would probably say no, that it is not part of deaf culture and that it is more part of hearing culture. I have, in working with the deaf community, I have found big examples of ways that music is utilized in the deaf culture. And if you remember, for example, the creation, performance, significance, and even the definition of music varies according to culture and social context. Music in America is very different than, let's say, music in tribal Africa. And I would like to make the same comparison that music in mainstream hearing culture might be different in music that's found and created by the deaf community. One example I love to use is the Gallaudet fight song. The song has strong rhythmic examples inside of it. It has a call and response type of feel, and it is used by the deaf and passed from generation to generation, much like a folk song is passed down from generation to generation in the hearing culture. Another example of music in the deaf culture is DPAN. Deaf Performing Artists Network, dpan.com, is a website where deaf people can perform. And there's a performer there named Sean Forbes who actually creates raps and incorporates ASL sign into his raps. And my last example of music in deaf culture is Rathskeller, which is a deaf performing arts group that travels around the United States performing rhythmic chants, performing dance, and performing all kinds of instruments. Or actually it's more geared towards movement and sign. I'll give you a second to read the slide. For my graduate studies, I looked at the use of music to teach vocabulary. I chose 24 target words, and I really focused on children aged 3 and 4 years old. I had a group of a hearing sample, and a group of students who are deaf, hard of hearing. And I targeted words in 6 different categories to teach them. And I made sure before I started the testing that they were unaware of the vocabulary that I was introducing. In this project, I had 4 conditions or 4 situations that I taught in. One was I paired music with visual aids and sign language. So I used song to teach vocabulary. In my second condition, I used rhythmic chant paired with visual aids and sign language. My third condition, I just used conversation paired with visual aids and sign language. And finally, my fourth condition was a control condition, which I didn't teach words at all in the session. I found that the preschoolers who are deaf, hard of hearing made the most gains in the rhythmic condition, that the rhythmic chant helped aid teach vocabulary the most out of the melodic conversation and the control group. I'll give you a second to read the slide. This finding corroborates with previous research that states rhythm is very salient for people with hearing loss. And the results could implicate that rhythmic chant could be used in preschool classrooms, in music classrooms. It may be beneficial to use rhythmic chant to teach vocabulary. In this next clip that I'm going to show, it's an example of how I use rhythmic chant to teach vocabulary. This is a chant that actually teaches opposites. And I'm going to show the clip for you now.
To my rap, tell me the opposite when I snap. Listen, I say yes, you say no. I say fast, you say no. Slow. I say hot, you say cold. I say young, you say old. I say wet, you say dry. I say hello, you say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Good job. One turn. Deontay. Listen, listen to my rap. Tell me the opposite when I snap. I say yes, you say no. I say fast, you say slow. I say hot, you say I say young, you say old. I say wet, you say dry. I say hello, you say bye-bye. Bye, Deontay.
Good job. Music is connected to language and may be a reinforcing way to teach and reinforce standards. For example, a common kindergarten English standard is remember key details from a story. A lot of times songs are stories. And we call them story songs. A lot of times folk songs, you embed stories in them. Parents and teachers can help students who are deaf, hard of hearing with temporal language by asking them what happens at the beginning of the song, what happens in the middle, and what happens at the end. A lot of songs have a sequence, and the music is a great memory aid. Plus, it gives students an opportunity to act out songs so that they can not only have an auditory aid with the music, but a kinesthetic aid with acting it out. An example that I like to use in my kindergarten classes is a song called Grizzly Bear, and I'm going to sing it for you right now. It goes, Grizzly bear, a grizzly bear is sleeping in a cave. Please be very quiet, very, very quiet. If you wake him, if you shake him, he gets very mad. And in a kindergarten setting, after I taught the song to the students, I would ask questions like, who is in the cave? What is the bear doing? When does the bear get mad? Where is the bear? Why should you not shake the bear or wake him? And these are great examples tied to that kindergarten standard. And it's a lot of fun for the students. Songbooks are another avenue where music is tied to literacy. A lot of the story songs that I talked to you about have been made into beautiful books with visual aids, and the song serves as an auditory aid, a memory cue for the students who are reading the book. So just a reminder about story songs that are illustrated. Moving on to an older grade, fourth grade English standard, a common standard is identify and use common types of figures of speech. I'll give you a second to read the slide. Research has indicated that students who are deaf, hard of hearing have less use of imaginative language, have difficulty understanding figurative or symbolic language, and because of this are delayed in other subjects. Well, music and song lyrics are rich in figurative language. Every popular song imaginable has some sort of figurative language incorporated into it. Music has similes, metaphors, tons of songs use idioms, and they're all different kinds of imagery. Sometimes songs are good examples for language. Other times there's songs, lyrics that are not good examples of the English language. Again, that is a good non-example to point out to students of what kind of language use is inappropriate here, or what kind of language use is appropriate. So figurative language popular music is a wonderful way to analyze figurative language. I'll give you a second to read the slide. In this slide, I give you ideas to utilize when listening to music with students. For example, music can be used to identify parts of speech used in the song, find all the adjectives in these song lyrics, find all the verbs. You could also identify synonyms that could be substituted for specific words. And this is a great way to expand vocabulary, picking out certain words in songs and asking students to substitute a word that has a similar meaning. You can ask them to substitute words within the same class, different adjectives, nouns, adverbs. You can ask them to identify errors in a word class use within the song. Writing songs with specific directives that target language composition objectives. And finally, just by describing the music can help students expand their language when talking about music and poetry, because lyrics to songs are really poetry. Here, I'd like to give you some examples of popular music or popular songs that use figurative language. For example, Katy Perry's Firework. She states, "Do you ever feel like a plastic bag drifting through the wind, wanting to start again? Do you ever feel so paper thin, like a house of cards, one blow from caving in?" Here you can talk to the students, what kind of meaning is what is the meaning that she's trying to convey here? Obviously, she's saying, do you feel sometimes that you don't matter, that you're not important? Let's look at some of the similes she uses. Let's look at some of the metaphors. Like a house of cards would be a great example of a simile. And so after the verse feels very hopeless, she then brings us the chorus of Firework, which she uses a simile, just open up like the 4th of July, and then the main chorus is the metaphor, "Baby, you're a firework." It'd be interesting to talk with students, what do you think she means by "you're a firework"? And what does that describe? And discussion can be opened up from there, because song lyrics are really poetry. Another popular song that I chose for an example is Fergie's "Big Girls Don't Cry." She uses figurative language like, "We've got some straightening out to do." It'd be an interesting conversation. What does straightening out mean? How would you sign that in ASL? "I'm going to miss you like a child misses their blanket." What is that concept trying to convey? "But I've got to move on with my life." Does she literally mean I've got to move into a different house, or that I need to proceed forward in my life? So these are examples of figurative language used in popular songs. And I just took the beginning of Adele's "Rolling in the Deep." She starts with the lyric, "There's a fire burning in my heart." Of course, you'd have to rely on context to know whether it's a passionate, loving fire or one that is full of misery and festering. So this would be a nice phrase to think about: ASL versus English. In English, this is how we would say it. Is there an ASL idiom that closely matches with this English phrase or this poetry? And online now, and it's a pretty amazing, all of the different postings of people and their interpretations of songs into ASL. With every popular song, there's about 200 translations of people's imaginative gloss. Some of them are really bad, and some of them are ingenious. Someone that I'd like to point out who I think is a genius is Kelly Greer. Kellygreer. She does a beautiful interpretation of Rolling in the Deep. And so this would be a good example to kind of compare language, the two languages, English and ASL. Here's the English on the board. Here is the ASL interpretation by Kelly Greer. Let's compare the two. And this brings us into talking about the bilingual, bicultural model. By analyzing English lyrics, it's a great way to discriminate between the two languages. It gives the student a real visual cue of here's English, here's ASL. Here's Rolling in the Deep by Adele, here's Kelly Greer's ASL interpretation. And it has students compare language models. And I again state, pick one popular song, evaluate performers of this song in ASL, who did the best job in performing the song by reflecting ASL's structures and rules. Here you can have middle school or high school students discriminating good language models, who justifies ASL and expresses it in a beautiful conceptual manner, and where is ASL badly represented? What is not American Sign Language? So it would be a good practice for students to figure out what is a good language model. In my middle school classes, I would assign a song project, and in following the bicultural, bilingual model, I would have students analyze song lyrics and create a gloss for the ASL. Another good practice is to take a song that is mostly performed in ASL, for example, the Gallaudet fight song or the CSDB fight song that the Colorado School for the Deaf and Blind uses, and figure out ways to translate the ASL to English. It's quite challenging and a great exercise for discriminating between the two language models. Over the years with the Song Project, I had many students perform some brilliant pieces where they were able to gloss the ASL independently and perform it artistically. I'm going to show you an example of a student who performs a song that he glossed and performs it with great artistry.
Your time.
Another project that I'd like to share with you is in the elementary school, we talked about the Star-Spangled Banner, which has very difficult vocabulary even for adults to analyze. So we took the English, we analyzed what the meaning was, and then we created an ASL gloss to the Star-Spangled Banner. Victoria does a beautiful job of expressing the gloss in a very musical, artistic way, and I'd like to share that with you now.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming?
I'm going to give you a few seconds to review the last slide. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize the following points. Music is highly reinforcing and can be reinforcing for students who are deaf, hard of hearing. It should be utilized to teach non-musical goals. When working with deaf, hard of hearing populations, it is important to remember that preference matters. So if a student is reinforced by a certain kind of music or a certain instrument, it is important for educators and parents to support that preference. Another important point is that rhythm is important to the deaf population. Rhythm is very salient. A lot of studies done with cochlear implants also state that rhythmic is the most salient characteristic of music for those with cochlear implants. So it is important to focus on rhythm. Music often requires the use of language, and teaching children who are deaf to talk or write about music gives them a non-threatening, enjoyable opportunity to practice language skills. And finally, discussions about meanings in music can also be structured to increase vocabulary and word class usage skills. I hope that you gained some knowledge from my presentation today. If you have any questions or comments about the presentation, feel free to contact me at my email, which is julienovak_77@yahoo.com. I look forward to reading your feedback. Thank you.